Hello and welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I'm Jake, that's Sean. I'm back in Las Vegas, thank goodness. I have forgotten how hot it is out here. It is, and it's a cool weekend. It's a cool weekend of only like 95 degrees.
It's hotter in New York now than it is in Las
That,
Vegas.
yeah, I think back in Indiana, it was hitting like the hundreds, but I'm like, because at first when I got to Indiana, I was like, man, it's like 70 degrees. I'm going to put a sweatshirt on in these mornings. And then now here in Las Vegas, I go outside and I'm like, "Ugh," but I'll get used to it here in a week. Give me a week. How are you
Yeah.
doing, Sean?
I'm good. I had a chill weekend. I know you competed in a one-piece tournament
I did. Yeah.
in
The,
Vegas.
the regional down here.
Yeah. So that's what you've been up to. I didn't really get up to much in the way of Pokemon this last weekend either myself, but definitely sounded off in Discord with a few people about different deck lists and things like that. A variety of news topics, but we
Oh yeah.
actually
We dropped some news topics in here
yeah.
in the Discord, the official Discord server, link in the description below if you want to join.
I will say though, luckily, so we had a part one of this original recording, which everything sort of went up in flames the day before we recorded this one. But good news for us is Pokemon dropped a lot of new information about the World Championships next year, about regionals next year, and even more changes. And so it's good that we didn't finish the recording because now it's too
Yeah. I mean,
much to keep
this
going.
is I think this is the first time in Pokemon history since we've done this podcast that they've released this major news on a
Yep.
Monday morning. So thankful because we always they always put it on Tuesday morning when we put out the episode. So finally we're ahead. We're ahead now.
Jake, I think maybe they're listeners and they're like, we got to get it out on Mondays because the Metapod, people need to know. People need to know.
Yeah. People
Mhm.
need to know. We did tell everybody in the Metapod Discord server on Mondays, so that's like your sneak preview of the Metapod sometimes. But today we're gonna, as Sean said, we're gonna be talking about the regional structure, the point structure. They've even made some different rules of the actual games. In a sense, not anything major like the turn one supporter mechanic, but
Yeah.
just kind of how games develop and games go over time throughout a tournament, whether you're at a regional or local championship, cup challenge, anything of that nature. But first, we're going to talk about the this past year's structure, right? The 2024-25 season that's going on right now and finishing at the World Championships, because we got this adjustment right of the top 125 for the regions, right? And everybody was up in arms, about this and things of that nature. And doomsday essentially. And so we're going to kind of review. We had our opinions of what we thought. I did not review the episode of what we thought. Did you review the episode of what we thought?
I didn't need to review. I think I remember what my main concerns were
As
was
long as you remember, I feel
yes.
like I was probably around the same.
So I think my main concern, which I don't think we were like in disagreement. I remember when we talked to you about it, you had an opinion based largely also on your time in competitive swimming in college,
Hmm.
which was that like, hey, the world championships should be something that are very difficult for a lot of people to achieve because it
Oh
is
yeah,
that
I still feel very strongly
yeah.
about that. Yeah, I will die on this hill.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's a totally reasonable perspective to have, right? Like, if you're thinking about it as a professional sport, yes, worlds shouldn't be something that you can just grind your way into. It's something that you have to like truly earn. Um, and while like 500 or then 600 points in North America, you still had to like earn it. It did feel like, hey, if you went to enough events, especially before they added in new best finish limit rules at
Mhm.
regionals, like before it was like every regional you just could get points. Um,
Well, I mean, like, my biggest issue with the old tournament structure was that you could never day two a regional and you could make it to Worlds, which
yeah,
is mind-boggling to me.
yeah. So this new system was top 125 or top whatever, depending on what region you were in. And so my concern was, well, if you take away that very clear goalpost for people of 600 points or whatever the number is, that it might discourage some people from competing competitively because I was like, I don't know how many people go to regionals, go to cups and challenges frequently in order to gain that number of points.
Mhm.
Because there's a ton of people, definitionally, that will not be top 125 that have no chance of getting that. So um, that was the thought process. But Jake, the numbers are in. I actually I went through 2024 for each region and 2025 numbers, and I wanted to compare like how many points did you actually need to make top 125? How much more was that than last year? And then we can just sort of talk about like, do we think that's too much to ask? Is it still not enough? Get some thoughts out there. But I know I sent you the points in the Discord. I don't know if you looked at them yet, Jake, but
I have looked through them. It's a lot of things,
there's a lot
but
of
I have
numbers.
looked
I did
through
a
them.
lot of number
Yeah.
crunching.
This
But
is good data.
it is, it is. But we can start with North America. Uh, I'll just go ahead and say the numbers, and then you can tell me if you are surprised, not surprised by it at all. So for 2024, you needed 600 points in North America. For everybody out there listening that maybe doesn't know what the structure used to be, there's some context. Um, and what that resulted in last year was roughly 200 and I think 13 players in North America qualified for Worlds, which is not many, right? Like it's still a very
Yeah,
small
like
percentage.
out of the whole perspective of people who get play points, right?
Yep.
It is a small percentage.
Yeah. Um, but obviously, with top 125, that means that there are about 90 fewer North American players that will go to Worlds this year. I say roughly because technically, if you want a regional in North America, you bypass the point requirements, and so like there'll be a few extras here and there probably. Um, but Jake, the number of points you needed for top 125 this year was 724.
Not
So
surprising.
yeah, and I will
I'm
say,
trying to look. I'm
I
trying to look. What was? Do you know what 125th
yes.
was last year?
Yes, so
Okay,
I have it in
sorry.
there. So top 125 last year was 660 points. So
Okay, so
it
it's a
is
64-point increase.
yeah, 64 points. So roughly just a 10% increase in the number of points in order to get the same position.
Mhm.
So I'll just throw that out there and then just remind people that points did technically increase at large events this year. So you could earn more if you did better, but there were more best finish limits as well. So you could get fewer points from regionals, fewer points from cups. So I don't know the spread of like how much that would have affected it, but I'm going to open it up to you, Jake, just for North America. How does this feel knowing the numbers
I
now?
I think that's perfectly fine, and I think that's perfectly normal and something to be expected. Because you think about, like, when you just have a clear cut, you need to get 600 points and you qualify for the World Championships. That's not necessarily something that incentivizes people once they hit 600 to continue any farther, right? Like,
True.
if I hit 600, I'm done. I'm good. I'm just grinding for Worlds at that point. Maybe I still attend like a local regional or something like that, but I'm not going hard in doing all that stuff. Where in comparison to the top 125, you have people competing all the time, right? Because you don't know what the threshold is. You can guess as to what the threshold is, but you never know because you never know if you're sitting at number 125, if number 126 gets fourth place at NAIC, they're gonna hurdle you if you go 3-6 or whatever on day one or whatever it may be. So, I mean, we had the biggest tournament, really, or one of the biggest tournaments of all time, and 3,800 players in Masters, right, at the North American International Championships. And I think it was really cool to see just like how many people were grinding and how seriously they took it. And I really feel like the people that wanted it a lot, like, went to these events, and I'm sure yeah, like, gatekeeps a little bit because, like, if you can't travel to more than 2 regionals a season, it's really tough if you don't just, like, absolutely go insane in those 2 regionals, but, I think it was pretty fair overall, in my opinion, I think 125 was a pretty good number to cut off at.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know the exact point spread, but I'm trying to think of like what that would mean for North American players, like how well would you have need to have done at like regionals or whatever? Because let's say you max out your cups, that's 200 points. You're still 524 points away from that cutoff,
Y- Yeah.
which means like, okay, well, if you max out your challenges, I think is it best finish limit 4 of cups and challenges this year? Or is it
I think
6?
so, but I'm gonna be honest, I can't remember. I'm gonna try my best this upcoming season to
Yeah.
remember that.
But it's something like that, 4 or 6. So like you get between like, let's say you max out your cups and challenges, and that gets you maybe at best halfway there. Like that's me being
Mhm.
generous with 6 of each. Because that would put you at 300 plus 6 times 15 is 90, 390. That gets you about halfway there to 724. So in a best case scenario, I do think the regionals are a top 4 or 5. So then you got to go and get like 300, 400 points at regionals. And if it's best 4 or 5, that means you have to get probably on average 100 points per regional.
I am pretty sure it's 3
The regional
in
limit?
terms of maybe 2025 play point values for leagues and tournaments, regional championships, 3 per event, no limit. Oh, I guess that's different then. Wait, that doesn't
Um,
sound right.
uh, there
Oh,
was a
best
best,
limit finish 5. Yeah,
yeah,
best
5.
limit finish is 5 shared with special and international championships. So regionals, internationals,
And
SPEs all
does it
combined
say
in
cups and
this.
challenges or no? Not on that one.
On this page that I'm looking at is the regional going to the League Cups. The League
It's either
Cups
4 or 6.
where League Cups is 4 each, yes, for
4.
both league challenges and cups.
Okay, so we can actually do the math now. So
Yeah.
4 times 50 is 200. 4 times 15 is 60. 260 out of 724. That means you got to get 464 points from your top 5, which is just shy of like 90. So you got to get
So
between
you
85 to 90 points.
which I believe at pretty much all the regionals
2,000 person
is
regionals.
top 128.
So you have to average top 128 at regionals. And
Well, top 128. So 65 to 128 is 80 points, and 33 to 64 is 100 points. So you have to get higher than 64 sometimes, it sounds like.
yeah. So I will say though, like that's a lot. I think, it's a
Mhm.
very different structure than we've had in years past because like I said,
It's incredibly different.
yeah, incredibly different. Like before you could go to as many regionals as possible and it felt pay to win a little bit of qualifying for worlds. Like people who could go to the most events can just grind enough points and make it. But now you kind of have to average probably top 100, let's say, at 5 regionals to even
Mhm.
get close to that 724 points,
Well, here's
which
the thing,
is
you get
crazy.
top 8 and you're at least 280 points.
Well, sure. I mean, yeah, if you
Yeah,
just make
like,
just
you
make
win the
top
whole
cut.
thing and you get 350.
Just make top 8 at an
Yeah, just do
IC
it,
and
it's
you're
that easy,
fine.
it's that easy.
That's crazy. Yeah. So net, I think it is extremely difficult. I wanted to put all of these points into context
Yeah.
because a pure value of points only matters, like only is like useful if you can conceptualize what it means to earn those because it's
Mhm.
not grinding. So I will say it's only a 10% increase in points for North American players. So I would say on average, North American players probably didn't have a huge change year over year. Best finish limits went down. So like that was a
It's
big
not
change, but
as big of a change as a lot of people in the knee-jerk reaction when they first announced this. It's not as big of a change as what everybody in or alluded to.
I,
Um,
I will
it's a
hold it there
decent
though.
change. It's a decent change, but it's not as big as what everybody, made it out to be in the beginning,
Now I will
in my
pause.
opinion.
I will say I will pause there though, because that's just North America. I have the
Yes.
numbers for the other main regions except for Middle East. And let me tell
Mhm.
you, the knee jerk reactions are warranted for the other regions.
Yeah.
So EU, comparing EU to get top 125, you needed exactly 700 points. And I just want to do a huge shout out to Antoine Boulet. Tuan Lay, if you know their amazing translation work all over the socials. Tuan Lay was exactly 125th place. So congrats, just congrats there. But 700 points for EU. Granted, EU does have a lot of their own regionals and special events, so they have probably a not dissimilar number of events that North American players can go to. But if you compare that to 2024, top 125, that is a 27% increase. They had 552 points. So you needed to get not 64 points more, but 148 points more. You needed to get a top 16 finish more at a regional to qualify this year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
And that's not even the worst.
No.
Or I guess I should say that's not even the biggest
Yeah.
gap, is what I should say.
So that was EU. It's a pretty big jump. I do think that for EU players, there probably was a bit of a shell shock for the people who weren't the most deeply invested in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go to regions like Latin America. Latin America, it was 634 points to get top 100. They only have top 100. They don't have top 125. So,
Mm-hmm.
but compared to 2024, it was 440 points for that same position, which is a 44% increase. You have to get like almost 200 points more to get top 125 in Latin America.
It's pretty big. Now, they have been adding more events in Latin America, I feel like.
They have.
Or
Yeah.
at least I saw the regional schedule or the event schedule for the first half of this upcoming season, and it had a good amount of that. I don't have the exact numbers on me.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. There are more events there now, more opportunities for people to earn points. I do wonder if it is like how much more difficult it is for Latin American players to travel to like NAIC and EUIC. They do have LAIC. They have an IC near them. But I do think that generally speaking, it's a little cheaper and easier for North Americans and Europeans to like go back and forth between their ICs, but more difficult for Latin American players to get an extra IC somewhere else. But maybe that doesn't really matter for a player who's going for a Worlds invite, because it's already going to be a very small slice of that pie.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the biggest, hardest hit region was definitely Oceania. So Latin America had top 100, and Oceania just gets top 20. Now,
granted, they have the smallest player size, right?
Yeah.
But a very high quality player size. You have Brent Tonneson, which is Gardevoir deck, won 3 regionals this year alone. And then like Natalie Millar, and you got just the list can go on and on.
Oh yeah, and
in a growing region.
Yes, yeah, but top 20 is that's basically an asymmetric top cut at NIC. Like
that's pretty tight.
So that for them it was 625 points needed for this year, which considering that's only like 9 points off of Latin America, and they have far fewer events in their region. And comparing to the year before, it was 417 points for top 20. So that's a 50% increase. So you needed to get, 50% more points year over year, which I don't know. It's a Latin America and Oceania in particular. I do think that the struggle is real for players that want to go to Worlds, because the jump year over year was, I think, a lot.
Especially because they're not adding more players, I think,
Yeah.
right? Do they add more players?
Like number of players?
No, because there was a point qualification. Never mind. It was just a point threshold. Just kidding.
Yeah, like so, I think LATAM at 100 players, top 100, and we'll talk about what they do this year, but top 100 felt all right for LATAM. I think Oceania, that would be the one if I was Pokemon Company looking at numbers purely.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that seems kind of like a small group just from Oceania. I would maybe consider increasing that. I haven't looked at the numbers for this next year, but I did do a little bit of number crunching in general. North American seniors, it was 690 points for top 100, which is a 34% increase year over year from 514. So I will say, parents out there who are taking their kids to these events, especially
Y'all don't get
seniors.
paid enough. Yeah,
Yeah, I
y'all
think
don't get paid enough.
yeah, parents definitely felt the pain of needing to grind an extra 180 points for their kid.
Mhm.
And juniors was basically the same. It was 680 points for top 75 in North America, which is a 24% jump. So, while North American Masters, I think, had the smallest year over year change, juniors and seniors definitely did get a bit of a get
And it's
hit
tough
pretty
for the
hard.
sen it's tough for the seniors too when Gabriel Fernandez is having the LeBron James year, in the senior division, and he's winning. Well, he's not NA, but, you know what I mean.
No, I know,
He's
but I mean,
winning all these events
he's
all the
coming to your
time.
event in NAIC and still winning
Yeah,
that, and you're like,
he's winning, nobody's winning besides
yeah.
him.
So, but yeah, I just wanted to. I think it was useful to talk about what the actual numbers netted out to be. I think that these numbers are a good baseline now for players that are. If you are one of those people who is dreaming of going to Worlds next year, now you probably have a better sense of okay, I'm gonna need to basically I need to 100% day two, 5 regionals minimum.
Mhm.
And of those day twos, I need to get top 64-ish on average, to really be in that top 125 contention. So,
I did say that Worlds needed to be, more prestigious and exclusive, right? And it's exactly that now.
yeah. But Jake, we had some changes coming this year for
Some
for
big news.
Worlds. Where do you want to start with all this? What's new for the 2026 Pokemon Championship Series?
I think probably we should talk about the schedule first because I am so excited to say that Las Vegas is getting a Pokemon regional happening in the first half of the year. They finally are coming to Vegas, Sean. They broke away from the gambling stigma, right? The game corner no longer existing in the games or whatever. Now the Pokemon Regional Championships coming out here. It's going to be on November 13th through the 16th. I will be there for sure, no matter what, probably. Most likely. I will say like 95% confident that I'll be there. So come hang out with the Metapod. But anyways, they revealed a ton of different dates in the regional schedule for this upcoming year, and I would say expect more because if you're looking at this, this has a lot of international events, right? There's only 3 North American events outside or 3 North American regionals, I will say, alongside NAIC. It's Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, and then Las Vegas. I would imagine from September to, I don't know, like the end of the year, there's probably going to be a couple more North American events. I think historically in the past, there's been other North American events that are later announced outside of this like first wave. I think they did that last year in there.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't say there's going to be like 10 North American events, in the first half of the season, but I would
Well,
expect like 1 or 2 more to open up.
perhaps. Yeah, yeah, there might be another one or two, but there definitely will be more next year too, because like you were saying, the only North American event next year, other than Worlds, is going to be NAIC again. But that that is that's definitely not going to be the only regional in North America before that. So odds
In the
are there would be
world, right?
another,
Like
huh?
right now in 2026, all they have is London EUIC in February, NAIC in June, and then Worlds in August. They're going to have way more that they'll announce in the
Yeah.
future. But
So
starting now looking at it, just for all of our audio only listeners that maybe can't see the graphic that Sean may have put on the screen or whatever of the regional schedule, September 13th through 14th is Monterrey in Latin America and also Frankfurt in Europe, Pittsburgh the 18th through the 21st, Milwaukee October 9th through the 12th, Belo Horizonte in Latin America from October 11th and 12th. Lille, we always get this wrong every single year. Every single year. That's gonna be in Europe from October 25th through the 28th. Gdansk?
yep.
Okay, cool. In Europe from November 1st and the 2nd, Las Vegas through the 13th and 16th of November, Buenos Aires. In Latin America, November 15th through the 16th, Sao Paulo, which is Latin America International Championships, LAIC, from November 21st through the 23rd. Stuttgart in Europe, November 29th and the 30th. London EUIC moving into 2026 February 13th through the 15th. NAIC again in New Orleans. So confirming that it will go back to New Orleans, during the 14th through the 12th of June, which I think is a week. No, it's not a week earlier. It's basically like that same weekend.
Oh, I have
Um,
more. So
yeah.
I'm on the website, Jake, and I have more events than
Oh, are
you.
there more? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Hold on.
So
Forget everything that I've said.
no. You're mostly right. There's a couple in other regions that have also been announced. There's a one in Mexico in Merida at the end of January. The same weekend, there's going to be one in the UK in Birmingham. There is a special championship in Auckland, New Zealand, which I don't think, have they ever had a special in Auckland?
I don't I can't recall like an event in New Zealand.
Yeah, so, I've been meaning to go to New Zealand. Maybe I'll go. It's around my birthday weekend, so, that'd be kind of dope.
That'd be
Um,
cool.
yeah. There's stuff in like Chile as well. In February, um, Seville in Spain. Another one in Mexico. Mexico's getting a decent number of regionals here.
Mhm.
Utrecht in the Netherlands, which they've done one there the last few years in May. Another one in Peru. So there's a few extras. Nothing else in North America though on the list yet.
Yeah, and it's just it'll come eventually. It'll
Yeah.
come eventually.
So that's sort of a nice thing though, because I know a lot of people out here were like, when are the regional schedules going to go up for especially the first part of the season? Because I think last year they didn't drop them until like just a few weeks before the September event. And people were like, I don't have time to plan for this. Like you need to give me more than like 3 weeks notice about a regional. So people have plenty of time now to plan if they want to go to Frankfurt or if they want to go to Pittsburgh here in the US in mid-September. So
Mhm.
yeah. So those are the regionals.
Very
Outside,
exciting. Start planning now.
yep. I will also
That's
say
why we
that
let off.
I will say that league cups and challenges will start up again in July.
Mhm.
So, if you are frequent at your locals, you probably have realized that there haven't been any challenges or cups this month. That is on purpose. They always take a month off during the month of NAIC. So, but they will be returning shortly, and the season will officially start on July 1st with those cups and challenges. So, anything happening like basically a week or week and a half after this podcast will be points towards the new season.
Mhm.
Uh, Outside of that, do you want to talk about the changes to championship points? Maybe let's see.
We could talk about the invitation numbers. They changed up the invitation
Yes,
numbers.
yeah. Let me see if I can find where that is listed.
It is right under it's under in the spam of messages that I sent you
Oh,
this
okay. Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you could just pull that up.
Scrolling down for it now.
For anyone
Okay.
who does not know, I was blowing up Sean's phone this morning with all of these changes while he was sitting at work, and I was
uh,
freaking out about all the stuff that
Let me
dropped.
see. I gotta. How do I put it on the screen? There we go. Okay, it's up there now. Uh, so yeah, uh, the updated numbers
Mhm.
are basically, I would say for seniors, they look largely unchanged. It was 100 in North America and Europe. I don't know if this is an explicit change they made, Jake. They used to call it North America, but now they're calling it USA and Canada.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming that then Mexico is part of Latin America. Maybe it always has been, and they're just being more explicit.
I think it's always been part of Latin America because I'm pretty sure Pablo Mesa Tablemon
Yeah, he's from
has
Mexico.
been like a representative of the Latin America community.
Yep.
So I think it's just trying to become more like what like you're trying to say, like easier to understand.
Yeah, that's fair. So
Mhm.
yeah, in the US and Canada, they're adding 10 more masters. They're making it top 135. Doesn't roll off the tongue quite as nicely, but Uh,
Yeah.
and Europe is going to stay along with masters at the same number, top 135. Latin America though is the region getting the biggest boost from 100 to 125 masters.
Mhm.
And then Oceania just still sitting at 20. Such is your
Unfortunately,
lot in life.
not gaining anything besides having one of the best regions in the world, right? You took away their IC and now you've, not given them any spots. But I think a lot of it has to do like when they're given spots is looking at like the overall play numbers,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we talked about how North America had one of the like the other week we talked about how North America had one of the biggest TCG tournaments ever, right, at NAIC with almost 4,000 Masters players. So, probably if you talk about like the overall player base, maybe there's just been a huge push of number of players in North America or in USA and Canada, and Oceania, even though it's growing, right, maybe not having as much growth in terms of the overall number of players year by year. I don't know. That's just my assumption. But also, 10 Masters players from the Middle East and South Africa are going to be able to qualify for the championships.
Yep. This last year it was just 5. So we're going from
Hmm.
5 to 10, doubling the numbers. But yeah, you're probably right. It's probably just reflective of growth percentages for the regions.
Hmm.
And Oceania just having a smaller population size. It's like, hey, maybe from a pure percentage perspective, they are already overrepresented. Meaning, like, if there's only 1,000 players in Oceania and 100,000 in Canada and the US, 20 out of 1,000 is a way higher percentage than 135 out of 100,000.
Hmm.
Those are random
Yeah,
numbers, by the way.
they might just have like a kicker. I mean, nobody will ever know, right?
Yeah.
Except the people who make these rules over at the Pokemon Company International. But it might be something as like there's a kicker. Like once you kind of reach this threshold as a region, then we bump up the number and based on like percentages. And I'm sure there's way more math than I've ever done in my life that's involved with it.
But yeah, so it will be interesting though, because in total, that's an extra, what, 25 plus 5, 30 plus 20. It's an extra 50 players that can
Hmm.
qualify for Worlds at minimum next year. So definitely, you know, good for people who wanted to qualify. It'll be a little easier than maybe you expected, just the
I
tiniest
also
bit.
I also wonder how much of an influence is with the winners. So I wonder out of the winners in North America or US and Canada, how many winners of a regional this season appear in the top 25, right? And so
Yeah.
like I wonder if they thought that people who win a regional or something don't necessarily make it into that top 125, and so you have I don't know, it's a weird thought.
I don't know. I think most of the people that we see doing really really well at regionals, those top
Yeah.
placements, you kind of see their names at every regional.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it's hard when Henry Chow wins, like, 5 regionals in a
right.
season, with the
You know,
same deck,
Brent
like
Tonneson also out here like, I'm going to win one, then I'm
yeah.
going to win another, and then, you got Isaiah Bradner. So, you've got all these players that, like, just because they won a regional doesn't mean they're done for the season, generally
Mhm.
speaking. So, um outside of that though, those are, like, I think, tell you the biggest changes. But there was one rule change that you wanted to talk about, Jake. What's going on rules wise?
So, Pokemon is officially going to be changing the overtime rules in the Pokemon trading card game. So, based on what it is right now at this very moment, right? Once you hit that 50 minutes, you have three in a best of three setting. Once you have that 50 minutes, you hit three extra turns, right? Zero, one, two, three. And that's it, right? It doesn't matter how long it takes, anything like that. What they noticed in their what they noticed in this sort of setting is that in end of round procedures, matches were taking so long to finish in the extra three turns. People not necessarily like slow playing, right? Because there's no time, but really taking their time to try to evaluate what the best decision is, right? And so the three extra turns just made events longer, right? Like made rounds longer in general. And it was every single round, and especially with judges and staff, right? Having to go over, you have a group of people probably that don't remember who was turn 0 or who remembers when it was turn 1 because you were so locked in the game, you didn't hear the "that is time in the round" thing. So you just have no idea. So there's a lot of complications that ended up coming with it, especially when you're trying to judge 4,000 people at a major event and things like that. So they've changed it to this new rule. After time is called in a round, competitors will have an additional full turn to complete their match. The active competitor will complete their turn, then the opponent will complete their turn, and if no winner is determined by that point, the game is a draw. So really it's like 0 and 1, right? We've cut out 2 and 3 in general. It is finish up the turn where time was called, and then that next person gets a turn, and then that's it. It's game over. We're not doing these extra things, anything like that, really, at all. So that is already
It's
pretty
huge.
crazy. Yeah, it's huge because that cuts out 2 turns of overtime, right? We already have enough ties, I feel like, in the game,
Yeah.
but now we're gonna have maybe more ties. I don't know. But there's another point to this rule that they're changing in terms of overtime. An overtime clock of 10 minutes will be instituted for this additional turn, and if play does not conclude within the allotted time, the game is a draw. The overtime clock is intentionally long compared to the average turn length with the hope that the clause will trigger only in extreme situations where slow play penalties may have already been considered and applied when appropriate.
Yeah.
So it almost sounds like so I'm going to go into the baseline facts of what we just read before I get into the like tinfoil hat theories almost. So One Piece kind of does this. So One Piece has a extra turns plus 5 minutes on the clock for overtime system in their game, but it's not a best of three. It's best of one until you get to top cut of the bracket in an event, and then it's best of three. Um, and that I feel like has been pretty okay. The only thing is like with the 5 minutes and you getting extra turns, there's one player that may take 4 minutes and you only take 1 minute, and is that really fair? But especially with turn 0 and turn 1, I feel like 10 minutes is probably enough time to be able to finish that, I think, for the most part, because they do say it is intentionally long, right, for that point. So they know pretty much that it is 60-minute rounds, right?
Yep.
And especially once overtime is called, you start going to all these places and like facilitating overtime. You know that each round is going to take 60 minutes. And after 60 minutes, you're pushing out the next round, basically. It's probably more like 61, 62, but
I mean,
you
what
get what I
something like
mean,
that.
right? Like, yeah, like you get what I mean. Like, it's not because before it was an unlimited amount of time, right? The 3 turns you took as long as you needed to, pretty much, outside of just going up and going to the bathroom, right? You just couldn't do something like that. What the weird thing to me is at the end, and I would love a judge to either add us somewhere like in our Discord server or YouTube comments or something like that. Hope that this clause will trigger only in extreme situations where slow play penalties may already be considered and applied when appropriate.
I
So before, when there's a judge involvement or whatever, sometimes they give you like extra time in the round because you lost time technically, like waiting for a judge ruling, something like that. So they try to give you back that time. I don't know. To me, and I may just be reading this wrong. It sounds like they're getting rid of that, where they're getting rid of that like extra time, right?
I don't think so. I think that judges
Okay.
will
I was gonna
like
say I hope that
yeah,
I'm
if you
not
have like a judge
right.
call that like takes like 5 or 10 minutes, they're just going to add that on. Um it's just whenever your game is supposed to conclude, you'll have an
Hmm.
extra 10 minutes from that point. I think that clause in there right now is just basically to say, "Hey, between all of our judges and the amount of tournaments that we've run, they've probably had people sitting there with stopwatches testing like, okay, in overtime about how long on average the turn takes because you got to think at that point in the game, you don't need to do a lot of deck searching. You've done your deck searching at the beginning of the game. That's why they give you like 2 minutes, I think, some crazy amount of time. So
Yeah.
at that point in the game, you don't have to deck search nearly as much. Um, and so 10 minutes for turn 0 and turn 1 is more than enough time in the vast majority of cases. And I think it's just there to be like, hey, if for whatever reason you take more than 10 minutes in that turn 0, turn 1, odds are one person is probably slow playing, at which
Mhm.
point it doesn't benefit anyone to slow play at that point, right? Cuz like especially if you get 10 full minutes and you're trying to like say your turn 0 and you take like 7 or 8 of those 10 minutes, like that, if I was a judge, I'd be like, you didn't need 8 minutes of the additional 10 for the turn in which you were the starting player, you know? Um, for me, I see a lot of this as a rule change for large scale tournament organizers. Like you said, all of our big regionals, all are best of 3, which is kind of unique ish, not unique, but like unusual in the TCG world. A lot of other um, card games have a best of 1 until you get to day 2 or top cut, right?
Mhm.
And so for Pokemon, I told somebody at a One Piece tournament this weekend, I was like, "Oh yeah, Pokemon regionals, it's 9 rounds, best of 3," and they were like, "What? That's crazy!" And I'm like, "That's why when I go to like Bandai tournaments, it's a breeze. I got 8 rounds,
Yeah.
best of 3, best of 1.
I was gonna
Psh,
say this weekend I played 10 rounds. I played
fine,
10 rounds. I never hit overtime in my 30-minute rounds. I always had time to go talk to people, go to the bathroom, go fill up my water.
yeah,
It was glorious. It was cool. Now, granted, I was playing a very fast deck that is sometimes wins very fast. But anyways, that's besides the point. It's possible.
yeah,
And I think Pokemon players just take a long time because the game also just
yeah.
naturally takes way longer because you have to look in your deck for stuff and then you have to shuffle and
Shuffle,
then you have to
yeah,
cut and then you have to shuffle and then you have to cut. So it's way different. But yeah, I hope Pokemon I don't know. I kind of it's weird because I like Pokemon being able to use Nest Ball and grab any basic Pokemon because sometimes in One Piece I'm like, well, my hand sucks, I lose. Like,
I mean, look,
you know.
I think Pokemon, it's a game where the design, the whole design of the game from the outset was like, we are going to make this game where you can search your deck for almost every card, if you've built your deck right on any given turn. And so then it really becomes like it's largely up to you to make the right decisions on your turn, to sequence things correctly. Whereas other games are more so about making the right decisions with the resources that you have available to you and, knowing what's likely to come up in your deck. So it's just very different play styles. But yeah, I don't know. The one thing that I will say that I think this rules change could impact um ties in Pokemon, generally speaking, are not beneficial for either player.
No, especially when you get like 4 or 5 of them in a regional.
Right. And with decks like Gardevoir and Dragapult, single prize archetypes, etc., that you may not even start taking your prizes until, pretty far into the match. I think not having that additional turn, because I mean, how many games have you seen or been in where time gets called and the casters and the players and even people around you are like, oh my gosh, the only way that they can take this many prizes is if they do this crazy sequence and blah, blah, blah. Um, and but like games actually do go that long quite often where you need both of those turns to try to win. And I think that this change might have a negative effect in some instances where if if the game is kind of close and you are turn 0 and say that there's 3 prizes left or whatever, and it's literally not possible for you to win. Let's just say, right?
Mhm.
You might take a strategy of like, well, if I can't win on this exact turn, I will not even try to win. I will Professor Turo my 2 prizer out so that my opponent is not left with a way to win either. And then
Mhm.
I do think it puts a lot of power into the player zero's hands to force draws. And I think that, I don't know. This is like, again, I like having all these like little fears about rule changes, and it probably won't matter because look, nobody wants to tie, but there might be a lot of instances, especially in a best of 3, where you win game 1, you're in game 2, time is called, your turn 0, and then you have all the power in your hands of deciding whether or not your opponent even has the opportunity to win.
Mhm.
So this is how I feel about it. I'm like, there's problems with the current system. There's problems with this new system, and maybe the new system problems will be less apparent or obvious. But
It's really interesting because I think a lot of people have had an issue with the last couple years of 50-minute rounds and extra 3 turns, right, in the overtime structure, and, we've talked about on this podcast before, like, how people like Tord Reckliffe, uh, tried to propose, like, a point per win structure in your rounds to where like you get points based on how many points you or how
prizes
many
you've taken.
rounds you win
Oh,
or
okay.
not necessarily. It's like I can't remember exactly how he said it, but it was like you could get like 2 points in a match instead of 1 or 3 based on a tie,
Mm,
um, for different specific things. So it's like I think the community in general right now feels the consensus of like we didn't go forward at all.
yeah.
Like we either like stayed the same or we went down. And I feel like personally we went down in a sense with this because we just lost out on 2 turns. And I think it's more so just because of the efficiency of the game and running tournaments. Because I
Yeah.
think one of the big critiques that Pokemon can have and probably has gotten in like a lot of their feedback that they've done is that tournaments take way too long.
Yeah. I mean, they tried to change the tournament structure to be only 8 rounds day one. Remember that?
Yeah. Which
And that did not work out. They went back to 9 because they were like,
Mhm.
this 8 round thing did not, yeah, it just didn't function properly. Um, so this is sort of another attempt from Pokemon to be like, okay, we will take 2 entire turns away from every round, and that should theoretically buy them back. It probably buys them an extra 10 minutes per round, which if you stretch that
Mhm.
over 9 rounds is 90 minutes. So if the organizers can claw back an hour and a half's worth of time over a 9 round day, like, that might fix it. But I will say there might come a world, Jake, where we go towards Japan and go to a best of one day one regional structure, which like I wouldn't be completely opposed to. It would be a huge feels bad for certain situations, certain types of decks. But I think ultimately, as the game continues to grow and we get more and more players, it may just become necessary to move to a best of one structure.
There's a lot of conversations that you can have, and there's a lot of ideas worth throwing around. But we do know that, you talk about the saving time and things like that. They are adding another Swiss round to majors. So that's one of the things that they left out, especially with the asymmetrical top cut introduction, is they took out one of the Swiss rounds. And I think that's been a vocal point for a lot of the top level players of like, give us this Swiss round back. Like, this would just be so nice. And also on top of that, they also did a top 16 cap on the asymmetrical top cut. So those are two things that I do want to mention because I do, even though I just ragged on the overtime rules change, I do think giving that Swiss round back and also putting a cap like that top 16 cap on asymmetrical top cut, I think are both pretty good things to come out of this.
Yep. Now, I will say this is interesting. It says for most age divisions, Swiss Phase 1 will feature 8 Swiss tournament rounds. So it sounds like they're going to go back to the 8 day one rounds.
Are they going to go back to 8?
I mean, I don't
So
know.
maybe
It says for most
maybe what
age
I saw
divisions.
was
Now, I think they said they
ooh.
will be adding an additional Swiss round, but that probably, I would assume, means be added to the end. So it's an additional day 2 round.
Yeah, which doesn't really change anything because day 1 lost it, so it's the same amount of rounds, actually. Maybe I read this wrong.
I don't know. I mean, this is what I'm reading right now.
Yeah.
Um, it's the rationale behind this adjusting of Swiss rounds. It says it's to make it more likely that people with an X2 record can reach an asymmetrical top 8. Meaning if you add an
That
extra
was a big
round,
thing. That was a big thing because we
yeah,
did see in day 1 people have certain records and just knew that they could not make top 8 despite making day 2.
right. So I think this fixes that on the day two side of things, but they
Mhm.
are. It sounds like they're taking away a day one round, but then adding, I guess, two day two rounds or something like that, so that the maths basically. That's basically what it nets out to being.
Uh, so I wonder what the point total is that you're gonna need to get into day 2 then.
I mean, they might keep it at 18, right? They go 6-2.
So that means 6-2-1 now doesn't
Well, 6-2-1 is 9
or no,
rounds,
no, no,
just 6-2.
6-2-1 can't exist. Yeah, it has to
Yeah.
be well, they had 19 points, right? You had to get 19 points. That's why 6-2-1 existed. You had to have
Yes.
19 points to advance. So now you have to either have 18 points or if they keep it at 19, then that's a disaster in my opinion,
Well,
but,
no, no, yeah, 19 is not possible
yeah,
because then you're at 6-1-1. So if you have
yeah,
two losses, X2, you might as well drop. I don't think they'll ever do that.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I mean, we'll see when we actually have these
Mhm.
regionals, but it'll be interesting. I think TLDR for all of this is tournament organizers and large scale tournaments in general are struggling to keep up with the number of rounds and players,
Oh, yeah.
and they are
Like,
making quite a lot of changes that I think will have big consequences, good or bad, I don't know. But personally, I it does seem like more and more now you players are going to be encouraged to play decks that are a little faster. And maybe, Jake, this is part of the reason why they are bringing back three prize Pokemon.
you know, I thought about that earlier today. I didn't know if I wanted to be the one to say it on the podcast, but, 3 prize Pokemon are coming back, and if they're good, and if they're viable, then all you need is 2 knockouts.
I mean, I will say ADP, it was a fast game.
Yeah, they
You-
were fast games, but man, I hate that deck with all my heart and soul, and I hope it never comes back.
Let's just see ADP. Turn one going second. Let me just use my GX attack. Turn two,
Yeah, because
Boss
you
Dedenne.
play
Turn
Zacian
three,
you Metal Saucer,
yep,
you E-switch, you
Energy
attach
Switch.
to
Yep.
active, use the
Here's the thing.
GX.
Turn two, Boss Dedenne. Turn three, Boss something else. Hey, it's a 3-turn game.
Yep,
You know, 20,
yep.
2030, we're going to be Yu-Gi-Oh! It's going to be great.
But, 3-turn game is gonna take, 30 minutes because your turn 1's gonna be so long.
Yeah,
'Cause
as
you
you
have to
search
do a
through half of your
10-minute
deck
deck
for the
check.
combo.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you have to do a 10-minute deck check for your prizes on your
um,
first search.
I will be, you know what might happen, Jake? And I'm serious. Like, if time really does get this difficult, they might just eliminate the deck check entirely and say all players start with their prizes face up.
What that's something that I've heard some people talk about, and I'm like, I don't know if I hate that. I don't
It's
know, 'cause I
information
mean,
to you and your opponent. Your opponent gets to know what you put into your hand. Like,
I would be especially in One Piece, right? Because a lot
mhm,
of times you'll have what's called the life face
yeah,
up, and sometimes, you put it in your hand. So your opponent gets hand information. Like, I could see face up prizes because I think it would save a lot of time.
yeah.
I would agree. I don't know if they'll actually do it, but I think it could be an interesting thing to try out and test within their headquarters to see, that stuff.
I bet you top players, some would be for it, but I think a lot of people would be like, you've just eliminated a whole skill aspect of the
Yeah,
game.
I think that prize checking is a huge skill in the game, to be
Yeah,
honest. Like being able to efficiently prize check. Anybody can prize check and anybody can, take 10 minutes to look through the deck to figure out what the 6 prizes are, but it takes a good player to be able to speed through. And a lot of times too, you don't even find out all your prizes. You just find out the most important ones in that matchup at that time. You're like, okay, what do I need right now? I need energies and Pokemon, and that's it. I'll figure out the trainers later,
yeah,
and you do that on your next one. So it's like there is an aspect to where, like, yeah, I agree with that.
yeah. I don't know. I'd be interested to see. It might be, hey, I will say if you're at your locals and you want to be a little beta tester for all of this stuff, ask your the people who run your locals, like, hey, let's play a prizes face up tournament and see how that
Or
goes.
even just like, yeah, or even just before the tournament when you're doing practice games.
Yeah,
Just try.
that would be kind of fascinating though, because there's a whole other mental game of like what prizes you take when.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I play Town Map in my GLC deck whenever I get the chance, like, because that card's so nice for a singleton format.
yeah. So, anywho, Jake, I'm excited about the next season. I'm glad they're giving us all of this detail so quickly. And
Mhm.
I'm excited for you in Vegas getting a
Yeah.
regional.
Hopefully, I can actually do decent. I'm gonna try to play, and some of my buddies are already talking about how they wanna grind and stuff like that, so I'm excited for the Vegas regional. See me at the top table.
Dang,
Dang.
Vegas got everything these days. You got One Piece, you got
Yeah, we
Magicon,
just had
you got
we just had
Pokemon.
MagicCon this past weekend, which Ian Robb, fun fact, big shout outs to Ian Robb, got second place in the Pro Tour and lost to, I believe, a top 4 finisher in the 2005 Pokemon Worlds. So the winner and the second place finisher of the Magic Pro Tour are Pokemon finalists, like world finalists. So
That's crazy.
yeah, pretty cool. Pretty
Yeah,
cool fun
apparently
fact for you.
somebody, I think I saw somebody post, maybe it was in our Discord. It's like, and who said Pokemon players had no skill?
Yeah. Well, there's the, like, huge debate online, that you see, like, people rage bait all the time of, like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't get into it, but it is cool to see.
Well, sound
But
off
the
in the
guy who won it
comments.
has been like a the guy who won it has been like a Magic Pro for a long
Yeah.
time and not necessarily a Pokemon Pro. Uh, you know, he is good at Pokemon and he's played Pokemon and stuff like that, but I think especially after he was so successful at the World Championships that year, he just went pro in Magic and has been awesome ever since.
Yeah. Well, Jake, sign us off for this week.
That's going to be all for the Metapod podcast. Thank you so much for listening and hope to see you in the next episode. Let us know how you feel about these changes. Also, the Ace Trainer program is going to return. I think those cards that they said if you got like 200 championship points should be mailed out soon, or at least in theory they should be coming out soon. But no word on the street of what is coming in the next season. We'll tell you about that when we find out. I'm Jake. That's Sean. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.